and welcome to the PeriodT Podcast, where we're going to be talking to you about everything to do with periods.
I'm Jasleen.
And I'm Rebecca, and we are your hosts.
To start, we wanted to do our land acknowledgement. So we acknowledge that the land that we are meeting on is traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 and the Mississaugas of Credit. So we're going to briefly introduce ourselves and talk about kind of like the purpose of this podcast. Rebecca's going to go first.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm super excited about this podcast. So I'm going to start it off by saying, hi, I'm Rebecca. I'm super excited to be doing this with Jasleen. I'm studying currently at the University of Toronto, and I'm studying within the Faculty of Kinesiology, and it's honestly been an incredible experience so far. I'm definitely unsure as to what the future holds, but I have a great passion for everything to do with women's health, so who knows what will come from that direction of things. I became super passionate about this podcast and the topic in general because I believe it's so important that we educate young girls and also young men just about what's happening in the human body and all the changes that they're going through. I really think that a lot of information is lacking and insufficient when it comes to this topic. So I think it's super important that we reach these young people who are maybe struggling, and it's even people my age, young adults, getting into adulthood who still don't know enough information. So I'm really hoping to make a positive change through this podcast in the lives of young women, so that through knowledge and understanding, they can become more empowered and truly begin to embrace their body and femininity instead of hating and fearing it. So I really hope this podcast can be a useful instrument in reducing stigma around topics such as menstrual dysfunction and other reproductive disorders that can often have very harmful impacts within the lives of women.
Amazing introduction. So I'm Jasleen. I am a U of T kinesiology student. I'm also in third year, like Rebecca.
That's crazy.
And for me, I'm more interested in the teaching profession, and I'm like pretty sure about it, very certain, and like I know I want to pursue this. A large reason why is because of like the way that teachers are able to create like empowering and creative environments where students are able to kind of discover and explore who they are. And I feel like it's such a critical time in our lives, and teachers can really be a supportive role for people. Because I know for me and like my high school experience, because I want to teach at the high school level, my high school experience, my teachers were very critical in like teaching me about myself and like just allowing me. It's not even like them telling me, it's more just like allowing me to have space and like take up space and like own it, and and like go forward and just like discover who you are and like what you like and all these things. Like I know it's like through life you're always doing that, but like I feel like teachers can really like push that, and that's why I'm
Yeah.
I want to do that.
Very true.
Another thing is sorry?
I said very true.
Okay, and then another thing is, sorry, I wanted to also, for the community that I live in and like I've grown up in, it's kind of like a lower income community. I have seen like my friends and their families and like peers just struggle and have to face adversity at like a really young age, and like you begin to like question like what is the fairness in that, like why are some people going through things and some people not going through things. And basically I just want to help as much as I can. And another thing about like teaching and like even teaching in inner city schools is that like you get to see these things. So it's not all, it's like you're teaching, yes, but you're also like building communities, and that's a really important thing for me, just because like where I came from and like how I grew up. That's
Awesome.
me.
I love that. No, and it's very true, what you say about communities. Like, I think they're so underrated sometimes, but it's really true that, like, the community that we um, grow up in, sorry, they provide us with, like, the basis and the foundation for, like, the rest of life. So even, like, relating it to, like, this topic, for example,
Mhm.
um, I know that we do come from, like, similar cultures, and, like, sometimes, like, the culture that you come from can play a huge role in, like, what you learn about, periods and menstruation and, the female body as a whole, and
Mhm.
how it's viewed is, like, very different from, let's say, the modern Western culture.
Exactly.
So I think it's super important to recognize, like, community, and, like, I know that both of us have the hope of, like, growing this, like, online community, hopefully,
Mhm.
and, like, just bringing, like, people from different communities together into our community, I guess, that we're
Exactly.
trying to, like,
Yeah.
create,
Yeah.
and, like, make it into, like, a positive space where we just get to, like, talk about all things women,
Yep.
because, like, we're awesome.
True.
So, yeah. Um, yeah, so basically, kind of like me and Jasmine, I think, touched upon a lot of these points, but our purpose, like the purpose, the goal of our podcast is just to open up like a very necessary conversation for younger women and even older women about their bodies, specifically when it comes to the topic of menstruation. We feel like that we feel that only recently, like in our lives and just in society in general, has it become like more normalized to like be able to talk about your period like openly and talk about menstruation openly and have like other people like understand it. But there's still so many things that people are completely uneducated about. They don't know enough,
Mhm.
and it really like impacts them at like a very deep level in like so many realms of their life. So yeah, we really want to talk about like the scientific aspects of things, but we also want to talk about like social physiological things as well, and interrelate the two so we can give like an even kind of broader sense of the topic, if that makes
And
sense.
like just the experience as a woman, like when you're menstruating and when you're not menstruating, because that's also a thing, you know?
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also I think I know for me like just like learning more about like what's going on so that you know how to like cope with it and you can help other people who are important to you in your life understand how to cope with it.
Exactly.
So yeah, this podcast is like obviously going to be more directed towards young women, but we like also both have the hope that like it can reach men who want
Yeah.
to better understand periods and women's health, because we both, I know I keep saying we both because we both have talked about how much we agree about this,
Hmm.
but men don't have a good enough understanding about what goes on in the female body.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes that can be a like huge disservice to them and to women, because it makes it so that there's a lot of like stigma around periods and like around our PMS and our mood swings that are completely like hormonal and they're normal. Like we shouldn't feel
Literally.
ashamed. Yeah, like
You should, yeah,
we
there's
should
there's a
feel
lot, there's
ashamed.
like the shame aspect of it that
It's
like doesn't make
huge.
sense.
Yeah, like I know, okay, so me and Jasmine are actually in the same friend group, and like we both know like the things that go on in our friend group. Like sometimes like one of us will like do something or say something that's like a little bit like
Off.
sassy
Yeah.
or like off or like a little bit like harsh maybe, and immediate reaction from the guys in the group is she's on her period.
Are you on
Are
your
you on your period? Are
And
you on
it's
your period?
like
And I'm like,
that's
that is so offensive.
it is
Like,
offensive. It is because
yeah.
it's like saying that like like it's not your like emotion is not valid because of this.
Yeah. And throughout history, women have like been deemed like more emotional and more whatever. And like we start to see it as like a bad thing and like a shameful thing when really it's like a beautiful thing. We're more
Yeah.
emotional because we are have the fucking capability of making babies and birthing babies
I know
and
it's
literally
really
giving
epic.
life to
Yeah.
humans.
Yeah, like if
So
you
like
choose to like and you want to have babies, like imagine, like, that's just like
I know,
amazing.
like the emotion that that takes, like to like have a child, bring a child into the world, like care for that child, nurture that child. So there's just like something that women have that men like lack, and sometimes it can like make us seem like we're weak or like fragile, like emotionally, when it's really like the complete opposite.
Yeah.
Because yeah,
It's really
so
empowering in a way. Like if you think about it,
yeah,
like our emotions, like I talked about it with one of my like cousins, and we were talking about how like females, yes, they are emotional, and yes, they do sometimes like um act out of emotion their emotions, which I don't think is a bad thing. It's just
yeah,
like I think the stigma around it just makes it negative, but
yeah.
honestly it's powerful because you know like we're more in touch with our emotions, we're able to understand them, we're able to understand like when we interact with people. Like I know, like I don't get angry like
Yeah.
often, like very rarely, and like when I do, I know that there's something wrong with me. So then I
Hmm.
sit and I try to figure it out, and that's just
Yeah.
part of like I believe my me being a woman and me being able to understand that like my emotions like dictate how I'm doing on the inside, obviously, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It's like an outward expression of what's going on inside.
Yeah.
I think that's super important. And also, the one thing that we will talk about this more in like the next podcast or whatever, but one thing that's super important is recognizing that having a better understanding of what's going on biologically during menstruation and the state, like your entire cycle, basically. So
Hmm.
basically, every day of your life is so important because it can help you to be like it can help you to be a better version of yourself.
For
If I
sure.
notice, if I know that there's a trend in my PMS, so like 3 days before my period, I know that I get like super like emotional, like I'm super emotional, like things that like wouldn't normally bug me at all like just make me cry. Like I'll just be talking to someone and I just start crying and I'm
Yeah.
like, why am I crying?
Yeah.
And it's like allowing yourself to recognize that. Now I know myself well enough that I can be like having a conversation with someone and I'll be like, just so you know, I am probably going to get my period soon. I am probably going to be more emotional about this. Just don't, just ignore it. Like, don't like be surprised, don't be stunned. Like,
Yeah.
it's so important. Or like, for example, if you're in a relationship, like that your boyfriend knows, like, okay, this day she's going to be a little bit more sensitive. If she starts crying, like he doesn't have to have a panic attack because he did something wrong. It's like, no, like I'm sorry, I'm just like a little bit more like emotionally like unstable right now.
Yeah.
And I say the word unstable, but like that's really a bad term. Like just, you know, you're a little bit more emotional, and that's totally okay. Like it's your hormones, like the amount of biological stuff going on in your body, it is okay if you want to cry.
Exactly.
So yeah, so
What's the weirdest thing that you've cried for? Like, but before your period. Like for me, it
oh
was
my
like,
god.
for example, okay, right? Like one time I could not connect my AirPods to my phone, right? And for me, like to fall asleep, like I have to
You
listen to
need music.
something,
Yeah.
and I have to listen to something to fall asleep. I have trouble with sleep, whatever. But
Mhm.
like I couldn't get it to connect. And I started to panic. And then you know what? I just like bawled my eyes out because my AirPods would not connect to my phone.
It's like
Like
the
that was like
littlest
I was like,
things.
are you serious right now?
It's the littlest things. Like,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I'm trying to think of like the weirdest thing that I've cried over. Like, honestly, I don't even know. Like, so many. Like, it could be something like so little like that. But
Yeah.
I also know that like things that I would normally vocalize, like, and it's funny because I noticed this because it happened today to me, literally TMI, but it happened to me today. Um, but I was getting super, super upset with my boyfriend actually about like just like we were having a conversation and I was really upset. Like I wanted to start crying and he kept asking me like, what's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? Because I'm like a very facially emotional person.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, stop asking me that because I will start crying over absolutely freaking nothing. Like I don't even know why I'm gonna start crying, but like I will start crying if you keep asking me. So just
Literally.
stop.
Yeah.
Don't talk. Um, so yeah, but like I know, oh, one time, this is actually funny. So one time I was eating a cookie and I was this was before when I could actually drink milk. So this
Uh-huh.
was like when I was younger. And I was dipping the cookie in my milk because I used to do that.
Yeah,
Super
yeah.
sketch. And the cookie broke apart and I started crying.
Did it drop into the milk, right?
Yes. And then I had to get a spoon and eat the cookie out, but it's like not the same. Like I
It's
just
not
wanted it to be like, there's like a perfect,
a little
like
bit
the dunk
soft.
test.
Yep.
Yeah. But like it can't be falling apart.
Yeah,
Anyways.
I
So
totally
yeah,
agree.
my cookie got ruined and then I was like really upset
See, like
over
that's
like
it's like
absolutely
little
nothing.
things. Come on, man.
Yeah. Yeah, like my little sister will do something. I have a 1-year-old sister and she's like adorable. So she'll like
She's
make
so
a
cute.
face at me. She'll make a face at me and I'll just be like, oh my goodness, you're so cute. I'm like,
And just
come on, get it together. That's just my ovaries. It's okay.
it's okay. It's okay. It's
Yeah.
totally fine. Okay,
Yeah.
let's talk about our first experiences. So, do
I
you want
was
to go?
literally just gonna ask you, when did you get your first period?
I got mine in grade 6.
Okay. Oh,
So I was like, yeah,
same.
yeah,
Same.
yeah.
Literally
And you know
same.
what? Okay, let me tell you.
What did you
My
know about periods?
didn't like my cousin told me, right? Like briefly, she's like, this happens. She's like, oh, I have this, and like you bleed, and I'm like, bleed from where? Like I didn't even know we had 3 holes. Like I was like, what? I was in grade 6 and I didn't know. Nobody told you, right? And
It's like,
even health class, like started in grade 7 for me. Like I never like biology wise, like it was grade
yeah.
7. Anyways, back to grade 6. My cousin was like. My cousin was like, dude, this happens every month. I'm like, every month? Right? To every female? And I was like, no way. And what's it called? Okay, so that happened. And I kind of like whatevered about it. And then when I got it, it was just like a drop, like one like pinkish drop on my underwear in the morning, right? And I went to school. I didn't put anything and everything. And then I like came back home and like my underwear is like red. And I was like, ugh. And then I told my
I'm
mom,
dying.
I thought I was in trouble. Like I like treated it as if like I got in trouble and I was like, oh shit, like I have to tell my mom. So I told my mom, and this was like a really like I will remember this conversation for the rest of my life because like I realized how many things were like wrong with it like later on. But it's just because like my mom came from like a traditional like whatever
Yeah. Yeah.
place, and it was just like we sat in the bathroom. So like I was sitting on the toilet, she was sitting on the tub, and we were facing each other. And she's like, you're a woman now. I'm like, what? Okay.
You're like, damn.
And then she taught me how to use a pad, and I hated it because it was like a maxi pad. It was like super thick. But then
It's
my
like a
parents went out
diaper.
after and got me like really thin pads, and
Yeah.
I remember that, and I like really appreciate that. Like they went out for
Yeah.
me, right? And then after when we were about to leave the bathroom, like after all she told me was like how to like deal with it. That's it. Like I was not told like where it came from,
Why?
what's happening, how often, how long, how it's gonna hurt. Nobody told you it's gonna hurt like that. Okay. And then and then after that, like when we were about to leave the bathroom, my mom said to me, she's like, um, now like your life's gonna change. And I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like,
Huh.
your life's gonna change. I'm like, okay, what do you mean? What does this mean? Like,
That's so interesting.
yeah.
I feel like that has to probably do a lot with your culture though. Like
Oh,
she meant life's gonna
100%.
change in a way of like the way that you act, the way that you dress, the way that
Yeah,
you like the things that are deemed like okay, like you hanging out with boys, like
exactly.
that kind of stuff, like that's the stuff that changes. And that's super interesting to me.
Yeah. She was
Yeah.
most concerned about me being short. So at the time I was like 5'2", and my
Huh.
mom's like, the most you're gonna grow is 5'3". I'm 5'5" now, so
I got 3 inches.
got you, mama.
That's so funny.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's actually crazy. Okay, so I'll share my story.
yeah, yeah. Go.
Mine is yeah, so
Grade 6 too, right?
grade 6.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because by grade 7, I had grown to my full height. So I was always an abnormally tall kid. Like I
Same.
was always like very tall. And like I remember in grade 7 and 8, feeling so out of place all the time. I had
It's
these
like you're a bigger
big
girl.
boobs I didn't know what to do with. I was like, why are they here? I played sports, like I like lived sports. Like soccer was like my life.
Hmm.
So like I absolutely hated it that I had thighs the size of tree trunks and boobs that I didn't know what to do with. I was like, why like what are they like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, in grade 6 is when I hit puberty, and that's I pretty much like, for me, I don't remember like the whole stage of development. I just remember going from not having to worry about anything to like grade 7 being like, what the heck is going on? So yeah, I started in grade 6. I was at an all girls school at the time, so it was like super unawkward. I
Hmm.
remember getting my period and then going and asking my teacher for a pad because, so I think from like, it's interesting because like right from the get go, I was like super comfortable with periods. I also had two older sisters,
Hmm.
so I had kind of like learned from them. But also, when I was in I want to say grade 5, I believe. Yeah, it was grade 5. In grade 5, so I was at an all girls Catholic school.
Hmm.
So each year we would get like a different talk, and they would make it like a mother daughter event type thing. And you would get like a talk on a topic.
That's
This
interesting.
was like actually like a really good initiative that they did. So
Hmm.
I remember in grade 5, the talk topic was periods. So they had like an expert come in, and she gave like a talk and show you how to like use a pad, whatever, whatever, whatever.
Hmm.
And I remember it being like awkward at the time, but
Hmm.
then I remember like having like a super nice conversation with my mom after that on our own, and then getting like ice cream. And it was like super like, she's like, yeah, like the way I was explained it is actually so funny. I think
What?
back to it this day, I'm like, this is so ridiculous. My scientific based self hates it now. But
Oh.
someone described it to me as every month a cleaning lady comes to clean out your insides, and the like dirt or like the whatever is like you like is released through your bleeding out of your vajayjay.
Oh.
So yeah, it was like very like, okay, now that I think about it, like what else would you say to a grade 5? Do you know what I mean? But I feel like, and I was talking about this with someone, like by the age of like 10 or 11, which is scary, like absolutely scary, depending on like the education system that you're in. And I'm saying that because if you're in a co-ed education system, I think it's very different than being in
Hmm.
like, I was in an all girls education system.
Yeah.
But depending on that, you start talking about sex at a ridiculously young age. Like 11, 12-year-old boys are already talking about sex.
I was
Girls
in
maybe a little
grade
later.
4.
That's insane. So
Yeah.
think about it.
Hmm.
If you're talking about sex in grade 4, why aren't you learning about your period in grade 4? Why aren't
Literally.
you learning about it in grade 3? Do you know what I mean? It's like,
I
okay,
learned
so
about it after I got it. Like,
one thing is glamorized and like super accepted. Like sex is like, oh, it's this whatever. But like you should not be having sex if you don't understand your period. I'm
yep.
sorry. I'm saying it. That might be insensitive. People might disagree with me and hate me
Uh-huh.
for that. But I sincerely think that people who do not, men and women who do not mutually understand menstruation and what is happening in the female body should not be having sex,
Hmm.
because there's so many risks involved. And it's just like, if you don't understand your basic reproductive
Yeah.
like biology, like,
Hmm.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What is,
Another thing about that is just
yeah,
like the confidence part of it and the
yeah,
understanding your body. And like, because I know, like, me
literally, and
educating
not being
myself on my
embarrassed.
body, yeah,
Yeah,
me educating myself on my body, like, I feel more empowered. Like, I know what's going on, and I'm
yeah,
like, all right, okay, cool, it's cool. Like, you know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
What is like the culture in your house or like your community and your friend group surrounding like periods?
So, I it's funny because like, so I have a lot of sisters, and most of my sisters are like, in fact, all of my sisters who have their period are super like very much like they were very like closed off about it. Like, no, we didn't like talk about it, whatever. But then when I got my period, I would just like want to talk about it with people in the sense of like I want to ask them like, oh, did you like get your period at the same time? Like, so we were like synced up pretty like quickly. So we would
Yeah,
literally all get it. It was like 1 week, my poor father. 1 week was mom, 1 week was like Rach, 1 week was Tina, like literally like one after the other. Um, so yeah, I remember my dad would do the grocery shopping. So you would just tell dad what pads you wanted and dad would make sure you had them. So it was like a super comfortable topic in my house. Then when my mom, like when my brothers were born, again, I have a lot of brothers. Um, now in my house, it's like you have to be comfortable talking about it because like so we talk about it with my brothers and my brothers also have the like little bit of an attitude of like they make fun of us a little bit, but it's funny because I always joke with them now and I'm like your future girlfriends and wives are going to thank us because we have literally cultured you and taught you everything that you know about
exactly.
female whatever so you're set. So yeah, in my house, it's like a more comfortable topic, but definitely there's been points where it's like, oh my gosh, like I can't talk about this. Like, oh my gosh, I can't talk about this. One thing that came with like puberty that was like a super taboo topic in my house, I don't know why,
Mm-hmm.
was shaving. And like to this day will not talk to like my mom about shaving. I'll talk to my sisters about it, but not my mom. And like, I don't ask my mom questions. I just ask my sisters or my friends, which is weird. But now I'm at a point in my life where like I do research. I love researching like that kind of stuff. So yeah, I don't know. I think definitely parts of my family are very like taboo to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that one really big thing for me, and I don't know why I'm like this, but I'm a really like blunt and honest person. So
Same.
I need to be able to talk about things.
Yep.
Also, and this will come out in like the next podcast, I'm sure. I have my period is like an awful experience for me. It still is to this day.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I'm working on understanding better.
Mm-hmm.
But if I wasn't able to talk about my period with people who I was close to, I wouldn't like be close to them. So like even like friendships and stuff, and with guys too, if I can't talk to you about my period, like we're probably not that close.
Yep.
The reason being is it has such an incredible impact in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I have like really painful periods. I experience like a lot of terrible symptoms. And like if I can't be vocal about those and express how I'm feeling, like it stresses me out and it causes me a lot of like anxiety and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So like I need people who are gonna like be able to talk
Yeah.
about it with me
That's a
and
really
help me and like
yeah.
sympathize and be like, okay, like what can I get you? Like what do you need? Like that's like important to me. That's something that like means too much to me to like not have it in a friendship.
Yeah.
And I don't expect my guy friends to be like, oh, are you okay? But more just like understand that like if I'm crying randomly over nothing or if I'm in like excruciating pain, like don't cross me. Like don't piss me off kind of thing. So yeah,
Yeah.
I
For
would say that now it's like a very big, like very comfortable topic in
for
my
you
life.
to talk about.
I'm super comfortable talking about it with people. And also, I have definitely, like, I don't want to like toot my own horn, but I feel like I've broken down barriers within my family because I struggle so much with it. So it like forces people to like have to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Which I like really like, I'm like, okay, like, good job, Rebecca, like, keep doing that. Cause like, I'll talk about it with my aunt now because, and it's funny because you find out things that you never knew. Like I found out that my aunt suffered from endometriosis 2 weeks ago because I was talking about my period, and I
Mm-hmm.
was like, like that's crazy. That's such a huge part of your life.
Yeah.
How do like people not know about it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, like it's super interesting how like culture plays a role in that. I think it's so important that like people don't feel like shame or guilt around it. Like you just it's normal, like it's life.
Literally.
Yeah.
For like when it comes to like my household, it's like a very traditional and like very like
Yeah.
it's Punjabi household. I don't know, like it's very
We
like
don't talk about it. Yeah.
yeah, it's we're cool and all. Like see like for me, when I got my period, there was a very I'm the only sister, so it's me and like my two brothers, and I'm the middle child.
Hmm.
So there was a very distinct line made when I got my period of this is what it means to be a girl and this is what it means to be a boy.
Huh.
Why? Big and one like very clear example of this is we used to play outside all day every day from like
Yeah.
until like 9 p.m. or like whenever the street lights would go on or like whatever.
Hmm.
We just always have been playing outside and I love that. That was just like a big thing of my childhood and like even like now like we'll go play. The clothes that I wore and the like I was not allowed to go play outside when the boys were all playing outside. And that
Wow.
my mind and to
Yeah.
this day breaks my heart because it's like why
Yeah.
was that a thing? Like why
Yeah.
I don't know. That's like a whole different
That's also religious beliefs too. Like when we say culture, it's like religious beliefs and
mm,
spiritual beliefs and like parental like history. Like there's so much
yeah.
that like plays into it. Not that it's okay. Like I
Yeah.
agree with you.
It
Like
just
I think it's so
explains
sad,
it.
but it does explain it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like now even like me talking about it now, bro, like my heart is like, why
Yeah. You get
can't
like
believe that
upset.
happened.
There's
It
this like
makes me
one
sad.
hair
It
that like
truly
won't
does.
go.
Okay, so
Sorry.
then that another thing that like I wanted to talk about was like only like a couple weeks ago, like my mom was not like my mom was out of the country for a bit, and
Yeah.
my dad and I went grocery shopping, right? And we were in Costco, so and I was wearing jeans because like it's COVID, so when you're gonna wear jeans other than going
Going to
grocery
Costco.
shopping,
It's like
I look
party.
cute, right?
Yeah.
And then so I was wearing jeans and I could feel like that I was getting my period, but I was like hoping that it was like a false alarm, I was like, I
Yeah.
really and then I sit in the car and I look down and I'm like, and I like bled through everything. And like my dad was like, do you want to drive? Like I was in the passenger seat and he's like, do you want to drive? And I'm like, no, I really don't. And I'm like, can you just like drive home, please? Like, right? And he was like, what's wrong? Like, what? No, he didn't say what's wrong. He just said like, no, like I'll just stop the car. It's not that big of a deal. Like you can drive now. And I was like, no, I just got my period. That was the first time. I'm 20 years old. That was the first time I've mentioned to my father in like almost 10 years of me experiencing this period. I've never said the word period.
That's
And like my
crazy.
dad like froze. My dad didn't say anything for the rest of the car ride. Um like he was just like, I can't believe she's like it was like that's what it was. And I was just
That's
like, yeah.
hilarious.
And I turned the music up and I was like, okay. I
That's
try to
so
talk
funny.
about different things and I try to do everything. And I was like, I just couldn't. And then that
Yeah,
day, like my dad was actually really nice about it. Like he made dinner that day, he cleaned up that day, and he was like, because I was like, I was like laying in my bed. I'm like, please don't bother me. Like I just need to stay right here. And like that was a very interesting experience for me because I realized like my dad cares so much and like all these
yeah,
things, but it's just like I've never said it to him. And what if I said it younger to him? And what if we could have a better conversation? Even when it
yeah,
comes to like buying pads, my mom's always the one who will separately go to shoppers and buy myself and her pads. When it's like you could go grocery shopping and buy them.
yeah.
My
I
dad
think
has, but it's never been the right one. So,
that's another. Okay, they are confusing though, and we're gonna talk about this in another podcast
yep,
session, and I'm
on
actually
like how
excited.
to like figure out
But
which.
yeah, it's ridiculous. There's so many, and they're so expensive. That's a whole other
I
topic
really
too.
wish they were
Like,
free. like,
like you can get free condoms anywhere, but pads, tampons,
and like nice ones.
no. I know. Not the cardboard freaking sticks that you. Oh no. Yeah, no. Um,
Oh man.
yeah. Well, it's so I'm like so glad that that like happened.
Hmm.
I know that that can probably be still like hard sometimes, but like just you like opening up the conversation, like I think is so cool. Like imagine.
Like,
I also think that if you like have children in the future, like they'll be so lucky because you being brought up like that it like teaches you like what you maybe want to like be able to give
Want
your
and
kids like
don't
a
want.
safe, exactly, like I really want my kids to be able to like openly talk about stuff. Like I don't know, some people say it's TMI and whatever, but I'm like, but it's like natural and like people talk about other things. um so like we need to open up the conversation about something like this. Like
Even when
it's
it
something
comes to
that's
sexual
serious.
health, right? Like you
Exactly.
said, like if you're participating in like sexual intercourse, you
Yeah.
should like understand yourself, understand your body and the way it works. And
Yeah.
like obviously the person that you're like with,
With,
right?
yeah.
So that's really
Yeah.
important. And I don't think, yeah, like that thing about it being TMI kind of like bothers me because it's not.
Oh yeah, it's
Not
again, it's all stigma. And
exactly.
again, like that stigma extends into people with menstrual dysfunction. They don't talk about it because there's stigma. Like if a girl on her period complains about cramps, usually people are just like, "Oh, go on birth control. Like you'll be fine. Like it's not that painful." It's like, "No. I am shaking and vomiting when I get my period because my body is telling me that I am in pain."
Yep.
Like vomiting is a reaction to pain. I'm not nauseous, you
Yeah.
know? I'm
Yeah.
vomiting because I'm in pain.
Yeah.
So if someone walked in to the ER, okay, with a ruptured appendix and
Mhm.
was vomiting because they were in pain, guarantee they would be taken seriously.
Yep.
A young girl who walks into the ER saying that they have extremely painful menstrual cramps,
Mhm.
I guarantee you will not be taken seriously when a lot of those girls have underlying health issues
Yep.
that are not being addressed
Address,
properly.
exactly.
So this is something, and I'm at an age where now I can advocate for my own health and I can
Mhm.
go to the doctor and be like, no, I don't want to go on birth control. Can
Exactly.
you please take an ultrasound? I want to figure out what's wrong.
Blood work,
Because
like
I've grown up thinking that excruciating periods are normal. Like I've grown up thinking that's normal because that's all I know. All I know is like getting my period, a fever, throwing up. Like it's like a flu once a month,
yeah.
almost, essentially.
Mhm.
Painkillers don't do anything. People are popping Advil. I'm like, Advil? I'll take 6 of them and it won't do anything. And that's terrible. Like
That's really
no
concerning.
girl should be going through that, right? And okay,
Yeah.
yeah. No. Once I literally sat there and was like, how many of these like do I need to take for like need to like for the pain to just be like a little bit duller? Like
Mm.
I don't even need it to go away. I
Yeah.
just need it to like stop so that
Yeah.
I can like go to class and
Or
pay
like
attention in class.
exactly.
That's
Oh
my
my
thing. The
goodness.
quality of life is like okay, I hate complaining about this because I'm like there are people who like in countries where like they don't have any means of receiving health like stuff, like
Yeah.
they don't even have access.
Mhm.
But at the same time recognizing that even in like the Western culture, even in like a first world country, there are still serious issues within women's health that are not being addressed.
Yeah.
They're not being researched about enough
Yo.
for what the huge role that they play in life. You'd think that they have some answers around it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's such a it's literally life. It
Yeah.
is literally life.
Yeah.
Like, come on, guys, get it together.
Yeah.
And I know we were kind of mentioning that, when you look at studies for like biomechanics and kin and like all your different classes, you realize that there is not enough studies done on women in
Yeah.
general, not
Yeah.
even around periods.
Yeah.
And it's because men are simpler. Men are simpler.
Because you
Everything's
don't have
pretty
to
simple.
account for menstruation, right?
Exactly. You
And
don't
it's
have to
like
account for mood swings. You don't have to
exactly.
account for bad performance due to a period. Like, yeah,
So,
it's very interesting.
like that's a really good like kind of transition into like what we wanted to kind of address for like all of this podcast was like the research that we did was I feel like not even like in our studies, like when we were looking up references or like trying to figure out or learn and research about anything to do with women's health is very narrow, it's very
Mhm.
limited, it's very like specific. And part of the reason is because of like tracking your period, right? And like understanding the phases of your period. Because that only you can accurately only do that with women who are regularly menstruating, right?
Yeah.
So that's like half of the so women is like half of the population, and then regularly
He's like not even a quarter of the population, I bet
exactly,
you.
so that's like even smaller amount of the
Yeah.
population. And then it's like you're only really including this many women in all of your studies. You're leaving out like we're so complex, and like and it's like it's weird because you believe like science has evolved, and like, you know, including women is very important because, you know, like that we get to understand our bodies better.
Yeah.
Like other people get to understand your bodies better, right?
Yeah.
And there's just like a disconnect between our bodies and understanding them and exploring them so that we can like be better and understand that.
Sure.
And in a way, this will reduce stigma if you're able to understand it better. And another thing I wanted to talk about, your pain thing, it just like popped in my head, was a lot of people don't believe women when they say that they're in pain.
Yeah.
My anxiety is horrible when I'm on my period.
Yeah.
Like I'll be like crazy. Like it's not crazy, but it's just like I won't feel good, and it's like it's such a real feeling. And like when people don't believe you,
when people don't validate that, it's heartbreaking.
Yes. And it's like, but it's also like you shouldn't be like around these people, but like when they don't, like it's like frustrating for me. Like I know that my brothers, right, my younger brother, he asks me about like just like he asks me questions about like what is a period, what is this, what is that, what is that, and he will be so kind to me on my period. I love it. But like because he's like I don't really know, but it seems like it sucks, so I'll help you out. And he's just like, I was so happy when he came to me with questions about it when he learned about it in school. And like we went through it, and I like made him understand what it is and everything. My older brother's
that's so big.
He understands like all of science because like he's a science kid, so he gets that. So it's just like I really love like when you educate people about it. And this is just like females who are regularly menstruating, not even the ones who have irregular periods or like have issues with their period. Just all these things. And you know what, there was one of my classes, right, for advanced biomech, and I asked him, I'm like, you know, we usually look at able-bodied males, right, when it comes to studies about movement and sports, right? I asked him, I'm like, are we going to be talking about, you know, different bodies where I meant to say like females, but like also like abilities, like there are different abilities within humans. And he said that most studies are done on able-bodied males because they're simpler to conduct them. Like that made me feel so frustrated.
Yeah.
And I was like, and it was coming from a professor, and I was like, okay, like, you know what I mean? It was just like they understand that females are left out. Able-bodied people are like very able-bodied males are the ones that they, you know, use for these studies because of like understanding the simple things. But it's like, yeah, that's important, but it's also important to include females and like have them, you know, included in these studies because we're here, like we're alive, like we're hello.
And, and it's important, like it's the basis.
And what else did I want to talk about? There was another thing. Oh, like reducing stigma when you learn more about it, and that will help, I think, in allowing like a more open conversation around, you know, females' bodies, males' bodies,
normalizing
spaces and like gyms or recs, or like even in conversation when it comes to like advocating for yourself, like you said, and or other females. Like I think that is like the whole point of this podcast basically, and the whole point of like having this conversation, even me and you, like I believe that we will be able to like help other females. And, like,
I know, I really want to believe that. I'm like, I really hope people watch this. And
yeah. Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
No, I was just gonna say, like, I think that like concludes, like, I think we've, you know, covered what we want to.
So that's episode 0.
It's just like a little, I'm excited.
A little introduction.
Get to know us.
And just like what we want to talk about, and like I'm sure that you can see our passion pour into this podcast and how much we are really wanting to talk about this. And so that's episode 0. our next episode, we're going to be talking about biology and like just like your different phases and hormones and things. So stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Bye.
Okay. Peace.